Hello friends. As I have talked about in a few other videos before, last winter an author friend of mine passed away from colon cancer and we were very close in age. Obviously, her death hit me very hard. And when that kind of thing happens, people often say, live like today is the last day you'll have. And I think about that a lot, especially as at this point in life, I've lost a few friends to cancer who are around my age. So sometimes I think like, yeah, seize the day. Live like today is your last, except that's actually pretty hard to do. Like if it was actually my last day, I would probably go spend a ton of money just like eating something delicious or, it's not enough time to fly to another country. But like, let's say it's your last week. What are you going to do? Like take your dream vacation maybe, visit your family, eat all the best food. Like, you're not going to do a normal kind of thing. So you can't really live like tomorrow is your last day or this week is your last week because you still have obligations and bills to pay and you can't just go rack up credit card debt before you drop dead or whatever. On the other hand, as I've been pulling off this move from Asheville to Baltimore, I've had a couple different friends say things along the lines of like, wow, I can't believe you actually like did this thing. I can't believe you bought a house that you had not seen. Like it's a big move. And generally I am a pretty cautious person. So it's actually kind of crazy when I think about it that when I do lock onto something, I will do it. But I am kind of like that, I will admit. I'm like 90% sensible and 10% like, you know what, let's just like go for it. And it's that 10% of me that is willing to do something crazy and not as like safe that I think truly has brought me everything great in life. Now, I'm not saying, probably the other 90% is what makes the 10% work. But I do think that having that willingness to do something a little crazy is so important. If you're going to live a creative life or like a kind of independent life, I think even if you were starting a small business or you wanted to do advancing in your career, like making a big career move, like all kinds of lives, it's good to have a little part of yourself that's willing to do something crazy. And I gave up a lot of financial stability to do this, which is something I'm grappling with now. Like, it's great to have financial stability, but do you want it to be at the expense of actually living when you know there's something else that you want to be doing or you should be doing and that just like calls to you and you know that the only way you're going to do it is if you take a risk? Sometimes you got to do that thing. So I was talking to a friend about a lot of the kind of riskier things I've done over the last decade, shall we say. I stepped away largely from a fairly successful indie romance career to start this YouTube channel and write the books of my heart. I made this move. These are some big things that I've done that in a lot of ways look a little crazy, but I'm not getting any younger. So that's what I was talking to her about. Like, I hit upon the idea that I like to kind of live my life like I only have 10 years left. Because 10 years is like enough that you do have to grapple with the consequences. You do have to be somewhat sensible, but it's also short enough that you need to think about like, how do I really want to live this precious decade that I have? And I hope that I have many decades to go. Two of my grandparents are still alive at 90 years old and they're still like in pretty good health. So I hope that I am blessed with a long life like they have. But I think that thinking about it like that, like this is something I thought about when Liz died. I started thinking like, you just don't know how much time you have left. You can't actually live like you're going to die tomorrow. But what are the things that are really important to me to accomplish while I'm on this planet? If you're new here, my name is Lydia Foxglove and I'm a fantasy author. On this channel, I talk about the creative life in general and the writing life in particular, the psychological, financial, practical sides of all these things. And I've been making my living as a creative since 2009, which is not an easy thing to do. Now that I've been in the business for almost a decade, I've seen different career paths my friends have taken, all of which are valid. Some of them went back to a day job, whether it was happily or reluctantly, but there's no snobbery here as far as whether you're working a creative life for yourself or whether you're working a full-time job. Both paths can have great advantages and disadvantages. But for the people I know who have managed to stay in the creative space for almost a decade or more, like me, one thing I think a lot of us have in common is that willingness to take a bit of a risk and adapt. But when you are adapting, you don't know if the adaptation is going to work. Every time you adapt, people always talk about this like, oh, it's a great thing for your business if you can adapt. But what is not as mentioned as often is that every time you adapt, you have a chance of failure. You're trying something new when you adapt. And so it might bomb. You might do something that's just not it. So you need this willingness to fail, and you need a willingness to take a risk. I was watching another YouTube channel the other day, and it was in the middle of my move. So unfortunately, I don't remember what it was. It's buried somewhere deep in my history at this point now. I didn't save it, but they were talking about how the most successful artists are the ones that have failed the most because they are the most willing to take a risk. And that definitely resonates with me. I've had a lot of failures. Sometimes it feels like I've failed more than I've succeeded, but that is also what has kept me in this business because I'm always willing to do something new, something that might be a little crazy or seem a little less safe than the other thing. But part of that mindset comes from like really wanting to like not stay safe, not stay stuck, but to always be thinking about what do I really want to accomplish while I'm here? And one of the things that can be difficult is knowing when that time has arrived, the time to pivot, the time to adapt, the time to take a risk. When is that time versus like actually you don't want to change too much. You do want to commit to things when you do them. So when I was thinking about this move, one of the things that drove me to start the process of trying to move is that I had that nagging feeling that I was stuck in a place where I was happy. I was very happy on the short term. I was working in the little used bookstore and my parents were there and there were a lot of things that weren't quite working for me. Like I didn't have a lot to get really excited about my daily life. There wasn't a lot of really exciting places to go and I was really lacking in friendships. So I didn't have a lot of days where I was like, I cannot wait. Like the day you mark on your calendar where you're like, I can't wait for this day. The only way I was going to get one of those really was to go on a vacation. And since I don't like to fly and I don't like to leave my cats in Dade for very long, I didn't take any vacations. And I don't really want to take a lot of vacations. So there just wasn't a lot to look forward to. Pretty much my little shopping days I would have with my mom were like the highlights of my life, and they were great, don't get me wrong, but there was a part of me that was like, wow, I'm have this me and mom go into the discount markets marked on my calendar for 2 months, oh man, I can't wait. And that it seems a little there should be something else in there that's a little more wow than that. So that was one problem. Problem 2 is that I kept thinking, what is my life going to look like here in 10 or 20 years? I would hope my parents live a long time because, as I said, my grandparents are still alive. So I would hope that my mom has some good genetics. My dad also has some very long-lived people in his family. So I'm hoping they're around a while. But the fact is, they're getting older. The guy who runs the bookstore, he's the same age as them. So his mom is also still alive. So he also has some very good genetics. So the chances, admittedly, that one of them might outlive me probably aren't terrible. But, I'm just what is my life going to look like when the people that are most important to me here are 85 years old? I don't want to feel like I'm living in a retirement community, which is kind of how I felt when I was living there because most of the people that were really important to us were older. So this video is getting a little morbid, but I'm thinking about these long-term things. And I have this sense of I should be building a life somewhere else. I should be making the move now even though it hurts a little bit to leave a place that has a lot of good things for me and where I'm safe. I'm financially safe. I'm established. I've got my house. I've got my little town. I have good things in the moment, but in the long run, I just know this is not where I want to be. And do I want to keep roots in a place that doesn't really excite me and where I don't really want to be long term, because it might be a lot harder to uproot myself if I don't do it now. So this was really nagging at me in the back of my mind for a while. So that is when I know I need to make a change. It's when something inside my soul feels stuck in a situation that doesn't feel quite right. Another example is when I was writing my indie romance to market. It was the end of 2021, and it didn't feel good anymore. When I first started doing it, I was having a lot of fun, but at this point, I've been doing it for like 5.5 years, and the spark, the excitement of doing it was starting to fade. I could feel it in the work I was producing. It no longer felt like I was really growing as a writer. And when I first did Write to Market, it did feel like I was growing as a writer a lot. And I was getting a lot of new skills, and I was trying a lot of things, and I was experimenting and playing, and it felt really good, like I was growing. And after 5 years, it didn't feel like that anymore. I wasn't having fun. I didn't feel like I was playing or learning or changing. I just felt stuck. In that case, fate intervened. That was when my father-in-law died, and I ended up selling all of his stuff for a couple years instead of writing. But I think either way, I was already looking for something else, for a way to shift my circumstances and do something different, so that I no longer felt like I was stuck in one place. The feeling is like everything in life is tolerable. Everything in life is safe, but nothing really feels good about it. This might happen with a place you live, a day job, a self-employed job, a relationship, whatever it is. It's that feeling that's like, this is fine. This is fine. But if you thought about only having 10 years to live, still being stuck in that same spot in 10 years when you die, how does that feel in your gut? Or is there something where you imagine this is where I want to be when I get to the end? I want to make sure that I do this thing before I go. So I was talking to my friend Sarah, who was also a friend of Liz, and we were talking a little about like writing to market and balancing things like having a mortgage and having bills and life obligations, with that sense that sometimes you just got to take the shot. And it might fail. Things might get a little rough. But how would it feel if you didn't try? And we both felt like, we're thinking through like, how do we think Liz would have felt about these decisions we're making? Would she have told us to do the thing when she herself was facing her own mortality at such a relatively young age? So even when I give my friends advice, I think about this now. Sarah and I hadn't talked for a little while, and she was asking me how the YouTube channel was going, and I was telling her, when I started this, the only reason that I was willing to take this level of risk is because my father-in-law had died, and we had some buffer money from an inheritance and selling his stuff. I had enough of a buffer that I felt like, even if I don't make a lot of money for a couple of years, I can try this. And by the end of 2 years, like, if I'm not making enough, then, like, if I've drained all my savings, then I'm to get back to work, do something for real. And I don't think I ever would have taken this chance if not for that safety net, like a very ample safety net. But as it turned out, once I started this, I ended up only having to use like 10% of the safety net while I was getting the channel going, and I was writing not to market anymore, and I wasn't doing a lot of social media marketing or anything. Like, I honestly was doing a lot of things wrong and just like figuring things out, and yet still enough things went right that I was still able to make 90% of my living in the first 2 years. So I think about that kind of thing, and I'm like, well, what if my father-in-law hadn't died? I wouldn't have taken this risk. I would have stayed stuck maybe, but I could have just done it even without, like, I could have taken the risk anyway and it would have been fine. Like, even if I went into debt a little at some point, I would probably get out of it, which has also happened to me before, where I was in debt and I just thought I'll never be able to figure this out. And lo and behold, I totally did pay back the debt and was more than fine. So now this is how I'm thinking of like my gut check when I feel stuck in some way, or like the life I have isn't really quite fulfilling me in the way I want it, and I'm assessing a new path and a new risk, is if I knew I only had 10 years left, would I dare to do this? Because like in 10 years, I can probably figure it out. I have enough time to start something new and create something new before I'm gone. So that's just my thought for the day. I hope is helpful to someone. If you've ever taken a big risk in your life, whether it was with a safety net or not, some people have a much higher ratio of risk than me, and some people have a much smaller risk than me even. Some people don't even have the 10% crazy, you know? Some people are willing to like go for it all the time and just like, oh, I'll figure it out later. What kind of ratio of risk taking do you think that you have, and do you think that has served you well? Personally, I'm actually trying to be a little more willing to take risks than I already am, because they've always worked out. Every time I've taken a risk, even though some of them were failures, I always learned something that I was able to apply the next thing and do better the next time. So like all my risks have no regrets about any of my risks. So I'm trying to be a little more willing to take them in the future. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like more from me, members get 2 bonus videos a month voted on by you guys, and you can access those through my YouTube memberships, Patreon, or Substack. You also get access to my Discord server, where we talk about writing and general shenanigans all day. If you'd like to read any of my books, the Hidden Lands books are the ones I recommend first. They're the books of my heart, but I also have a number of other books as well. Links in the description. I generally post every Wednesday and Sunday evenings at 8 p.m. And I thank you all so much for supporting the channel and being here and watching. We'll see you next time. Bye!